All right. Good evening. This is Spore. Take me a second here to get the ball rolling. So tonight, the attempt will be, with this poorly organized fort, to add some form of power to minecarts. Let me actually go ahead and pull up chat here so I can see if anybody's talking. So I don't know if any of you have added power to anything before. But there's a couple options. You can do wind power or water power. There is also dwarven power, but that is not going to be a long-term solution to any really form of automation, kind of by default. So you would require a constant stream of mechanics standing there manually pumping wherever you're going to be getting your power from. And that is only usable for really certain tasks. You can't manually turn a water wheel. You can manually operate pumps. That's what you can do there. So what we're going to be doing is long term, we're going to be building a water power because it is more efficient. Because thankfully in Dwarf Fortress there is a form of gravity and a form of applied friction, but there is not a constant coefficient friction. Can't find my word there. There is not coefficient. There it is. So water wheels can actually create enough power to then pump the water back up to once again dump it on itself. There are exploit versions of this self where the water is both moving the water wheel and the water wheel is moving the water, and you end up with just like one square of water generating power. But we're not going to be doing that. We'll go ahead and do the what's I guess considered non-exploitive way of powering the water in a circle. The beauty of this is that you end up with a long term. You can end up with a pump stack up to some water wheels, down a waterfall, and into a reservoir and start the whole thing over. We will be doing a dwarven power plant long term. We will be doing at least one of those loops, and in case nobody has seen wind power before, I can go ahead and hook some of that up, but it is really inefficient. By the time you get at any distance from the surface to your fort, you've lost almost all power gained by even a substantial wind farm. Okay, so we do need to get to a good water supply, a infinite water supply, so that either needs to be an aquifer, or the use of a wind farm is similar to current applications for solar power. In enormous quantities, they are possible when they can all be linked into one single axle down. But the problem is, out here in the real world, solar farms are really fragile and they don't have goblins attacking them. So it's really useful if you need power for a specific pump stack well away from your other established power source. Similar to sometimes small gates towards country homes or way out in a desert or something like that. Those gates will be powered by a solar panel because it costs more to run a cable out there from an established power source than it does for the solar panel. So they can be used. They are not totally useless, but water is just so much more efficient. It is more dangerous inherently. If you do it correctly, of course, it's perfectly safe, but that's what they say about nuclear power. So if last night I was trying this out again to make sure I still knew how to do this, and in the process I flooded my fort. So this may be the end of this fort if I don't learn from my mistake. So I'm going to pull up the wiki over here on my other monitor and make sure that I'm actually looking at it this time instead of trying to build it from memory. That was a horrible idea. Water wheel. I use the wiki for just about everything when referencing. Sometimes it's easier to see somebody do it than... sometimes it's easier to see somebody do it than try to read this text and look through a diagram. But what I'm referencing here, so I'm going to be typing in water wheel. Can you guys hear the music okay? Let's just get there through the link. Okay, there we go. Water wheels. Fantastic. So, searched for power. Gave me the choice of wind power or water power. I clicked water. Go to the water wheel here. It's a simple 3x1 component. Takes 3 pieces. They say it takes 3 wood to generate 90 net power. It's a little more complex than that, but that is a really good overview here. Waterfalls, they say do not work with waterfalls nor in magma, but there are ways. It does work at the top or bottom of a waterfall. No, you cannot have magma power plants to my knowledge. If any of you have figured out a way to do that, it's a lot more dwarfy and that sounds awesome. So I would totally do it. Architecture, carpentry. See, the only way I could see it working with magma is what if you built it out of nether caps? Nether caps are magma safe and they are wood, but that would be a test for another day. Okay, so this is what I'm going to be referencing when we build this. Mostly this diagram right here on the right, that's really where it's at. For those of you that, I mean, ASCII can be a little confusing when you're running your whole interface in kind of the default there that comes with Dwarf Fortress, but it's more than easy enough to understand these diagrams. So, just click there. Okay. So we know we want it right here. Now, if this water freezes, which I don't remember if my water freezes in this embark, if this water freezes, that's not a problem as long as you're not getting powered from it. That will bring your power plant to a stop. If you just put water wheels out on this, but we're going to build totally off to the side subsurface power plants first because they're very reliable. And so we need to come down here and get back. Okay. So I don't know exactly how far I need to be right there. Perfect. So we'll go ahead and get my miners started on that. I don't know what else they're mining. It could be any number of things. Oh, there we go. Go ahead and bring that to a stop so that they can get to work on what we're actually wanting them to mine instead of just mining for no reason. So have any of you played with powering minecarts before? Okay. Well, I did say I was going to wait till about 7:30. So outside of mining that shaft, I am going to go ahead and kind of take it slow on that because I know there's a couple people that said they were going to join us right then. But if any of you have any questions about minecarts, I would love to answer them right now. I can diagram it off in this empty space. So I don't know if any of you have tried anything that I talked about last time, or anything that's been mentioned in the other streams, or anything you've read on the forums, because there's all sorts of theory crafting on the forums, and some of that science is valid and some of it is not. But most of the time they're pretty good about telling you whether or not they have tested it, and if they have tested it. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and take this chance to go back over what we talked about last time. Minecarts are a more advanced aspect of Dwarf Fortress. They're a recent addition, and I think they've totally changed the way we do everything. The goal of this fort was to teach people the basics on minecarts, and now that I've done that, and I have not paid attention to any other aspect of this fort, so it may collapse before I can get to it, to see if I cannot automate and show people how to automate every single industry so that the whole fort runs on people that live at work, and they get they get their input raw materials dropped off 1 square away, and they send them out. And I'm going to do this in a way where I have these in-between floors to keep them from getting squished, to keep them out of these roots. There's also some other opportunities later where you can add floodgates and bridges and all sorts of things where you can kind of lock the entrances so that when the minecart passes over a certain pressure plate before it gets up to full speed, it opens the door, goes through, the door closes behind it, and then it hits a roller and shoots up to what we will call terminal velocity, which rollers can help you maintain constantly. And then when going downhill, you can actually exceed the rate at which you could fall by dwarven gravity. So to start out, we did an A to B, just showing people very simple. So what happens is I have all of my trees getting cut out here, and they bring in the lumber, just like in your fort, and they set it in this 3x3. Now, because of sieges and stuff, you usually like to keep more than a 3x3 worth of wood around. Now they're going to take that and they're going to load it in this minecart. This minecart can hold quite a bit of wood. Holds 5 times as much as a wheelbarrow, and a wheelbarrow holds quite a bit more than a dwarf. It does only hold 1 boulder, but it holds like 1 boulder equivalent of everything. So it holds like 1,000,000 shirts and so on and so on. Like 25,000 threads or something ridiculous. So then that minecart, when it meets the conditions that I've set for it, goes from here, goes up to this track stop, which immediately dumps it to the left. Now we've created what is called a quantum stockpile. This stockpile is infinitely large and can store as many items as we want on it. So it's going to hold all those logs right there, 2 squares away from my carpenter's workshop. Okay, so that's an A to B. And we'll talk about the depart conditions and what I mentioned there in a little bit. Let's go ahead and let's move from that to an ABC. So an ABC is just as simple. I have A as an input, B as an input, and C is an output. They are really, really simple to add any number of inputs as long as you have 1 output. The moment you want more than 1 output, it gets a lot more complicated. Now that being said, that's to imply that you want things equally split. You can pattern things where it, say, picks up the logs from here and then dumps the logs here, then goes and picks up the food, and then dumps the food out here by your logging operation into another quantum. That is possible. You can go every other. But it is very hard to say, okay, well, I have this infinite supply of logs,